Just as people are logging in, I want to remind everybody that as part of the CRC pre-Shavuos program, we have this wonderful lineup of shiurim tonight and going on through Erev Yom Tov. So we have it as well tomorrow night and Wednesday night. In addition, we have a community-wide learning of all of Mishnayos and all of Tanakh. And we encourage you to go to crcweb.org/Shavuos to sign up to take one parak, many prakim, so that you too can be part of the community-wide siyum. And again, you see the website on your screen now, crcweb.org/Shavuos, and you can sign up to be part of that siyum. We'd appreciate that. The third part is going to be a musical siyum with Eitan Katz on the Sunday following Shavuos. So again, to participate, please be part of the siyum as well. We'll start tonight's lineup with Rabbi Posner from the Skokie, for the Chabad of Skokie. Thank you so much, Rabbi Posner.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi Mustowski. I want to thank all of my chaverim in the CRC for coming up with this idea, planning it, putting it together. Thank you to Rabbi Mustowski and to Binyamin, who's there behind the scenes, for actually making it work. I would mention that in the chat, you have available the handout if you want to download it. I'll also be showing it on the screen, but if you want to actually have it in your hands or move around, I like always looking ahead at the handouts when I go to things because I'm curious to know if I can guess where he's heading with this. So you may want to look at there. If not, I'll show it in pieces as we work our way through. Let's jump right in. The subject is Matan Torah, sound and fury, signifying what? And the question is, what's the big deal? Just to give a little of a basis of the question, here we go with the first bit of the handout. These are familiar psukim if you look at them. This is describing Matan Torah and Parshas Yisro. I picked out a few of the many psukim there where it describes how there was thunder and lightning. There was this, and the big cloud and all the sounds, and the smoke and fire, and the whole mountain was trembling violently, and the people were terrified with this, and so on, and they were sure that they were going to die. And then there are other places in Torah we also have similar descriptions of the scene of Matan Torah. And the question is, you get the impression this was an extraordinary event. What's all the fireworks about? What's the fire and light show about? In fact, what is the big deal about Matan Torah? What happened on the 6th or 7th of Sivan when the Torah was given? What was remarkable about it? Let's go back to our handout here. Moving down, number 2. Here's an interesting medrash. It's not the best thing to bring to make the case, but I happen to like it for other reasons, so I figured I'll include it here. This is a medrash in Parshas Shmois, where Pari says, Tichvat Haved al Moshe, and Pari says he's going to make the people work even harder after Moshe comes the first time. And his argument is, the medrash says that the people had scrolls, megillas, that they would, on Shabbos, they would learn Torah from their scrolls, the Torahs which they had on Shabbos, and when they rested. So Pyrrhus said, let's make them work so hard so they shouldn't be able to find this relaxation and pleasure of learning Torah on Shabbos. So even in Mitzrayim, we see that they had Torah to learn. They had Shiurim, and they had written Torah, even Megillas, and they were still learning Torah. A stronger statement, more powerfully placed, you have this Gemara in Masechta Yoma, where it spells out in great detail. It says, that our forefathers always had yeshivas, always had learning, and it goes on to list specifically that Mitzrayim they had. Avram Avinu was a zaken v'yeshiv yeshiva. Avram sat in yeshiva and learned. Yitzchak was zaken yeshiv yeshiva. Yaakov was a zaken yeshiv yeshiva. Yaakov, they were all yeshiva students. So they were all learning Torah. So you might think that the Torah they learned was some kind of abstract philosophy, some kind of academic principles of Torah maybe, but didn't have a practical application. No, the Gemara says more than that. The Rav says that Avram Avinu is kiyam kol Torah kula. Avram Avinu kept the entire Torah. And to the point where the Gemara goes on to say at the last part of it, that a few Erev Tavshilin, which by the way, since we're mentioning it, remind you that this Thursday you have to make an Erev Tavshilin in order to be able to prepare on the first day of Shavuos for Shabbos. So the Erev Tavshilin is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, which was enacted, I believe, by Shlomo Melech. And yet we say that Avraham Avinu, 1,500 years before, kept the mitzvah of Erev Tavshilin. So what happened to Matan Torah? Avraham had the whole Torah, had everything. There are other examples in the Torah. I didn't bring them all here. Here's just one more, which I quoted here, which is the Gemara says that there were 10 mitzvahs which Yidden were given at Mara. Mara is in Parshas B'Shalach, before they arrived at Midbar Sin, before they came to Har Sinai, when they were at Mara, a few weeks out of Mitzrayim, before they made it into the middle of Sphira, so to speak. They were then given 10 mitzvahs then. So if we got 10 commandments by Matan Torah on Shavuos, we already got 10 mitzvahs 2 weeks before. We've been there, done that. The Gemara here lists that the 10 mitzvahs they were commanded again, the Shev mitzvahs b'Mayach, and also adds in here dinim, which is civil law, and Shabbos, and kibbud avayim. Rashi in Chumash actually says that they also got the mitzvah of para aduma. And the truth is, if you think through Rashis that Torah that we're familiar with, we know in other places as well where it says that they had Torah. When the Malachim came to Lot in Parshas Vayera, he baked matzah for them. Why? Because it was Pesach. Yaakov sends a message to Esav that im Lavan Garti. Rashi says, what is im Lavan Garti? I dwelt with Lavan. Garti, Rashi says, spells out Tayag, that Yaakov was telling Esav that even though I was by Lavan, I nonetheless kept the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. So even Esav knew about 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. So what was Matan Torah about? Now, what I want to share with you is the kind of thing, I once had a Rosh Hashiva that in the Shiurim, so there's typically a Rosh Hashiva, a high-level shir, they'll quote from different sources. Here's a Rishon, here's an Achron, Rabbi this says this one says that. They'll give different sources usually for the things, and then they try to have a little thing that they add on their own as well. Sometimes you would say these absolutely incredible ideas that you couldn't believe that they would never, for 3,500 years, no one ever thought of this idea before, and he thought it up. So we'd ask him, what's your source for this idea? And he would say, where could you look in Shas and not find it? It's everywhere. So the idea that I'm going to share with you really is an idea which once you get it, you find it everywhere in the Torah. But we're going to find it by looking at a Gemara, a seemingly obscure little one-liner in Gemara, where it says Masechta Shabbos that Yehuda Rav says that Gedolach Nosasarchum Megdol Hakbalas Bnei Eshchina, that fulfilling the mitzvah of being hospitable to guests is greater than being a host to the Shekhinah, receiving the divine presence. That they have the translation here. Where do we see this? We see this in the beginning of Parshas Vayera. Avram, so the third day after the Milah, Vayera Hashem al Avram, Hashem comes to Avram, and Avram, was, of course, excited to have the special guest that Hashem himself came to be Mevarkeh Cholim. So we see that Hashem visits the sick. He came to visit Avram when he was sick. But at the same time, he has his eye out the door. He's looking for guests. He sees 3 people approaching. So the pasuk says that Avram sees them, sees these 3 people, and he says, Avram says, and Gemara quotes the pasuk, says, Im lama satzi chen beinecha, al nosavar me'alav decha. He says, please, if I find favor in your eyes, do not leave. Now, you read the pasuk simply, it sounds like Avram is addressing one of the leader of these 3, saying, "Don't your people are passing by my tent. Don't keep on going. Stop here. Come inside. Stay, sit here under the tree. Let me serve you." But here the Gemara is explaining it as Avram is not addressing the passersby. Avram is addressing Hashem. And he's saying, Hashem, I know that you're here to visit me, but I've got something more important to do now. I have to go take care of these guests. So you, God, you wait here, and I'll get back to you in a little while. And here we see that Achnos Zarchim is more important than being a host to the Shekhinah, because Avram tells God to wait while he goes to take care of these guests. Now, if you think about it, this is a very difficult thing to understand. What's happening here? We know that they were not really people; they were angels. The angels had no need and no benefit from all of Avram's effort. They didn't need the food. There's discussions of whether they actually could not eat the food because they're angels and angels can't eat, or were they able to fake it? Were they able to somehow eat it? How did they eat it? They went through the motions. They certainly didn't need it. They didn't need all of the comforts that he extended to them. He didn't know that. He thought they were people. But the truth is that we know that it was a waste of time, the whole thing. So how could it be that Avram should have done something which is very disrespectful to God himself, tell him, God, you wait, I'm busy, to go do something which was not only trivial, it was meaningless. Now he didn't know. So that would mean, okay, it's not a blatant disrespect, but at least it's a shaygig. A shaygig is doing something unintentional. He was unintentionally disrespectful to God. He went to do something which was pointless, thinking it was important, thinking it was very important, and in fact, it wasn't important at all. And we know, when it talks about this, we see that Layun Tzadik 11, that said you can do these kinds of things. How can we say about Avram Avinu that he would have done something which is not just some kind of Avera, but rather an Avera which is really a direct affront to Hashem himself? Even if we somehow explain that, we also have the same question poses itself in a slightly different way. How could it be that if the Torah wants to teach us a principle, a very important principle, of something which is so important that it's more important than Kabbalah's Pnei of being a host to the Shekhinah, to Hashem himself, why does it teach us this from a false situation? Torah is a Torah of truth. Certainly, the Torah could have set up a situation where the Hachnas Zarchim was real Hachnas Zarchim, there were real guests who had real needs, the person really provided, they really did a mitzvah, and that mitzvah is greater than Kabbalah's Pnei. Why build it all on a falsehood, on a mistake? So we have to understand how do we base the halacha of the importance of Hachnas Zarchim on something like this. To understand this, we will go to another medrash. Come right up here. This is a medrash which, if you read it in the overall context, you might not realize what it's saying. You have to stop and think about it and realize what a powerful statement is being made. This is a medrash which is in the beginning of Parshas Bay, where Hashem tells Moshe, by the Makkos, he tells him, stretch out your hand over the heavens, and I think it's by the Arba. So the Medrash says in this, the fact that Moshe is raising his hands, Ala Shemayim, over the heavens. And Medrash says that this is a fulfillment or playing out of the pasuk where we say that Kol Shechafetz Hashem also, that everything which God wants, he can do. But God is not limited; he can do whatever he wants. Okay, I didn't bring the rest of the medrash, but I'd like to mention it because the medrash here is going to say how Hashem gave the Torah, which is what we're really interested in. But it goes on to give other examples. Where Hashem's first he created in the beginning of Bereshis, he creates the seas and the dry land, but then afterwards, when comes Kriyas Yamsuf, he makes the sea into dry land, so he can do whatever he wants. Kol Shechafetz also, God does whatever he feels like. Nobody tells him what to do. So one would be tempted to take this part of the Medrash in the same sense as just saying, oh, God could do what he wants. But it's really saying something much, much more powerful. Let's learn it together. Okay, so he says that we started saying that Hashem said the Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem V'aretz Nasan V'nei Adam, that the heavens are God's and the earth he gave to man, and yet Here he tells Moshe, oh, you could raise your hands up to the heaven. But the Medrash doesn't stop there. If that was the point that we're trying to say, oh, Hashem could do what he wants and he can even empower Moshe to raise his hand over the heavens, we've made the point. But the Medrash doesn't stop there. It comes and tells us something which doesn't seem to be necessary here, but it's necessary for us in our discussion. Medrash brings a mashal ma'adav. What can this be compared to? To a king who says that the Romans shall not descend to Syria and the Syrians shall not descend to Rome. There's two separate countries he rules over, and he does not want them mixing with each other. One king for both, and he puts up a great wall between them. The Romim and the Syrian cannot get together. So too, when Hashem created the world, he said Hashemayim Shemayim Hashem. That's one domain. And there's the Aretz, the earth, is another domain, and never the twain shall meet. Then, Kishabika Shliten Torah, when Hashem wanted to give the Torah, so then Bitel Gzeir Rishayna, he nullified this original decree. He said, I ruled that Rome and Syria can't mix, that the upper and lower can't mix. Forget it, I'm canceling that, I'm changing it. Now, the lower the lower worlds can go up to the higher worlds, and the and the upper worlds can go down to the lower. And he says, this is the new world order, where the heavens and the earth do meet. I will be the first one to do it, because as Hashem al Har Sinai, that Hashem went down and descended upon Har Sinai, that was the El Yoinim coming down. And then Vel Moshe Amar El Hashem. Then afterwards, Hashem tells Moshe to go up to Hashem. This pasuk is later on, and says, "Oh, this is the meaning of Kol Shechavas Hashem Asa." So all of this is saying much more than just, "Oh, that's why Moshe could raise his hand over the heavens." Here, the Medrash is giving us a tremendous insight into what happened at Matan Torah. Why is it that Hashem first made a decree that the heavens and the earth can't get together? The fact that that Hashem had to separate out the dry land from the sea, we understand, because Hashem wanted to create sea creatures and he wanted to create land creatures. So you have to have land for the land creatures and sea for the sea creatures. Hashem created the world that way. That was his plan for creating the world. When it was necessary for the land creatures to get across to the other side, so we split the sea. God does what he wants. But why did God make this original decree separating them? And then we say that he nullified the decree, and now they can get together. What does it mean? We understand when you split the sea. We understand that the sea was turned, the seabed was turned to dry land. They walked on it. They came out the other side. Then he put it back. We understand what happened. Where do we see that the decree was removed? What was the decree? So why was there a decree? Why was the separation? What does it mean that he separated it? To understand this, if you think about it, we think of the upper, and say, as the spiritual, and this world as the material world. What separates the spiritual and material? What is spiritual? I don't know a good definition for spiritual other than it's something which exists, and it doesn't meet any of the definitions or the criteria of existence as we know it. Physical existence, you can sense it with your five senses. Some things we know exist even though we can't. We can quantify them, we can weigh them, we can measure them, we can detect them with instruments. So that's material. And then there's spiritual. So spiritual is whatever we don't know, which we know that it's there. We have no idea what it is or how it is. We refer that as spiritual, or that which is upper. The truth is, though, that they're not. When we talk about upper and lower, they're not, although on one hand they seem mutually exclusive, they're really, really very close to each other. Because everything which exists because it's being created by Hashem. So God's divine energy, his power, the Asara Maimaris, the 10 utterances which correspond to the Asara Sedivus, which called the world into existence, are giving life to everything constantly. This is an idea which we can understand now better with the advent of scientific breakthroughs, where we understand that we see a world of matter, but really it's a world of energy. And just as it's true that there's physical energy which creates the matter, and really the things that we see as solid, as the Rabbi once told my father, when he was trying to explain to him how to explain something to someone else, he says, he ran his hand along the table, and he said, we feel that this table is solid. The truth is that there's much more empty space than there is solid mass here, but it feels solid to us. So we look at the world as a material world. The truth is what's really there is the energy, which is the physical energy, as Einstein explained the relationship, and there's the spiritual energy, God's energy, which calls it into existence. So although they're really intertwined with each other, the only way we could exist is by being oblivious to the other side. We exist as in a material world as material beings because we can't see the spiritual. If we could see it, it would be overwhelming. As the Jews said then, that if Hashem continues to speak to us, we'll die. We can't, or we say that that their souls flew out from within them over every word of the every one of the Aseres Dibros, because they couldn't contain it. It was too much for them. So you need to have it covered, need to have it separated. And therefore, Hashem created a mechitza, created a division, separate them, keep them apart, because they can't really coexist when they're openly there together. So the spiritual, the upper, is hidden from us, and we see the material. When Matan Torah came along, when Hashem gave us the Torah, so now Hashem says we're going to change things. Until now, there was a solid barrier, which meant that it was an unbridgeable gap. You could not connect it to. And therefore, when we talk about the Avos, for example, being servants of Hashem, their service wasn't a material service, a physical service, because the material world can't connect to the spiritual, couldn't connect. Their avodah was that they Avram Oyavi, that he loved Hashem, that he wanted to emulate Hashem and act accordingly, but it didn't. But it was all an avodah which took place within their neshama, in their spiritual side. And therefore, when Avram did the mitzvah of Achnasas Archim, coming back to where we jumped off from, what he was doing was expressing his desire to be hospitable. And as far as he was concerned then, that was the mitzvah. The mitzvah was to be hospitable. Whether or not the food was useful to the person didn't matter, because the spiritual and the material didn't mix. Materially speaking, it was a pointless activity, but spiritually it was very significant. Avram was being hospitable. It was the full fulfillment of the mitzvah as was possible before Matan Torah. Once the Torah was given, then things change and becomes the other way around. At this point, and this is the last thing I have here in the handout, we have here a Sifrei, which says a simple idea that if a person lost a coin, dropped it, lost it, a poor man found it, and the person took this coin and bought some food and ate it, so it's considered tzedakah, Maila Hakosav Kilu Zacha, the person did the mitzvah of tzedakah. Here you have a person who lost some money, he discovers a hole in his pocket, he had a cellar, which is a nice amount of money, he was planning to buy himself a sandwich for lunch, or some pizza, and he puts his hand in his pocket and the money is gone, and now he's hungry, and he's upset, and he's angry at himself. Why didn't I notice that I have a hole in the pocket? Why didn't I feel it as it was falling out of my pocket? I should have picked it up right away. So he is unhappy. He's not thinking about the poor person. But the fact is that the poor person found it, and that person who found it ate it, used it for food, and he gave life to that other person. That is tzedakah. So we see here, this is one example of many, of where it doesn't matter what the guy thought, the main thing is what got done. It's exactly the opposite of Avram. Here, the main thing is the person was hungry, he ate, great, the deed was done, the mitzvah was done, you did it, you get the reward for it, you get the schus of it, it's all done. Why is this so? Because now, once the Torah is given, now it's possible to bring that spiritual, that ruchnius, the kedusha, the holiness and godliness, you can bring it into the material world. And therefore the question is, did you affect the world? That is the question. You helped the person, boom, the mitzvah is done. Would you think about it? Would you feel about it? Yeah, it's important to have kavanah, it's a nice thing to have, but that's not the critical consideration. whole question whether mitzvah strichas kavan or not is beyond the scope of getting into here, but that's really the secondary part of it. Okay, and this explains many things. This explains, by the way, why Avram, we'll get into it, why Avram makes Eliezer swear by saying Sim lo yotcha tachas yirechi, because he had one mitzvah which actually changed the physical world, which was Milah. This explains also what all the thunder and lightning and the smoke and the mountains were about. I had a couple of weeks ago, I turned the light switch in my house, and I have one of these light fixtures has old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, and have these fancy little global bulbs that you can't get LED replacements, so it's still using the old-fashioned ones. And when I clicked on the light, so one of them blew out. But it didn't just blow out the bulb. It went pop and blew out half the house. I don't know what, it shorted out in a really crazy way. I had to go reset all the breakers. It was really big. Why? It got too much electricity flowing through it, and it just blew up. At Matan Torah, Hashem is changing the whole makeup of the world, where the makeup of the world is designed, where we have this very thick insulation separating the material world from the spiritual energy which is creating it. That's how it was till then. All that insulation is being removed. And now Hashem is saying we have a new world. It's different. Now it's possible to get the kedusha and the holiness and the godliness into the material world. You can take an object, and take a cow, take the hide, write a mezuzah on it, it becomes holy, write a sefer Torah, make tefillin. You can change the material world. You could be sure that there was a real jolt of energy going through the world. Just like I went through my light bulb there. And that's what we saw there in Matan Torah, the thunder and the lightning and the smoke and all that was going on was simply the world receiving the adjusting, I guess, to the new reality of where it's possible to bring together the spiritual and the physical. The takeaway that we have from this is to realize what power we were given by Matan Torah. Hashem gives us the Torah. Before that, we had a Torah which could make us good people. We could be like Avram, we could be kind, we could be those who serve Hashem, but we couldn't change the world. Hashem at Matan Torah empowers us. He didn't just take away the insulation for the world, but he also empowered us as Yidden to be the ones to bring that from potential into actual. And that's when we say that we are partners with Hashem in creation. We are critical partners. Hashem's plan of making the world into a world of godliness. He did the first part. He created the world. You have the godliness and you have the world. But how do you bring them together? Bring them together is us doing the mitzvahs. So this is when we celebrate on Shavuos, Matan Torah, and Kabbalah Torah, we are celebrating the fact that we are being empowered to bring about this impossible thing of putting together these two opposites, material and spiritual, and to bring them together, synthesize them, to make that the tachtonim yalu l'yonim, that the lowest of the physical world should be elevated up to the spiritual, to the holy, to the divine. That's our mission. That's what Hashem empowers us to do. And when we finish our mission, then that's when the world will be ready for the open revelation, to be able to see it, to be able to see the godliness which is there throughout the world, as we will be able to see with the coming of Mashiach immediately.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Posner. Before Rabbi Matanki begins, I just want to remind everybody who's signed on now that as part of this pre-Shavuos preparation, the CRC program includes a community-wide siyum of learning Mishnayos and learning Tanakh. And anyone who hasn't done so already, please go to crcweb.org/Shavuos. Again, crcweb.org/Shavuos to sign up to take part in the community-wide learning and the community-wide siyum. And there's also information there about the musical siyum on the Sunday following Shavuos, a week from today. And again, we appreciate anyone who can sign up for learning.